Toni Mannix is obsessed with George Reeves even after he's dead. The death of George Reeves, the original Superman, has haunted fans and investigators for over 60 years. Now, a long-buried diary hidden away by actress Toni Mannix has resurfaced. And inside it are entries so disturbing. They may finally explain what really happened that tragic night in 1959. Was it something far more sinister? You're about to find out. Toni Mannix meets George Reeves. There was once a time when Hollywood shimmered like that is now known as the golden age of movies, when the studios were dream factories and fiefdoms. It was a time when names like Clark Gable, Bette Davis, and Cary Grant didn't just perform on the screen, they reigned. And among these stars, one of the most curious and heartbreaking stories belonged to a man named George Reeves, the original Superman. To millions of children and adults alike in the 1950s. George Reeves wasn't just an actor. He was Superman, the Man of Steel, brought to life in grainy black and white on glowing TV screens across America. He had that uniquely American handsomeness, clean-cut, dependable dark-haired, and strong-jawed with a smile that made people trust him. He wasn't intimidating like some of his matinee idol peers. He was accessible, the neighbor you admired, an everyman in a cape. Before the cape, George Reeves had been just another handsome face trying to find his way in the film industry. He had a bit part in Gone with the Wind, one of the most iconic films of all time, but it did little to launch him into stardom. He drifted from role to role, never quite finding his break until Superman. The television series Adventures of Superman became a cultural phenomenon, and George its center. Children adored him. Parents trusted him. He became a symbol of American strength, decency, and quiet courage in a post-war world still healing. He was at last, it seemed, on solid ground in a town notorious for its quicksand. But behind that red cape was a man quietly unraveling. Then, in 1959, Hollywood woke to shocking headlines. George Reeves was dead. A single wound. It was a cruel ending that didn't make sense, not to his fans, not to those who had followed his journey from obscurity to stardom. Why would a man at the peak of his career, finally embraced by success after years of struggle, choose to leave it all behind? To the public, it was a mystery. But in the smoky backrooms of Hollywood's elite, in whispered conversations between insiders, another story began to circulate, one far more tangled, more tragic, and filled with the shadowy echoes that often haunted the Golden Age. At the heart of it was a woman named Toni Mannix. Toni wasn't just anyone. She was the wife of Eddie Mannix, a powerful MGM executive and one of the most feared men in town. The scandalous affair between Toni Mannix and Hollywood actor George Reeves stands as one of Tinseltown's most fascinating relationships that ended up in tragedy. Toni Mannix and George Reeves met at an MGM Studios social gathering in 1951. Toni's husband, Eddie Mannix, was a powerful MGM executive who dominated Hollywood's inner circles. Their chance meeting sparked one of Hollywood's most intricate love stories. Toni Mannix was 45 when she first saw the 37-year-old George Reeves. He had just landed his breakthrough role as Superman in Adventures of Superman, a show that would make him famous. Their connection grew faster because Eddie Mannix was much older than Toni, in his 60s then. Their marriage had become more of an arrangement than a love match. Eddie Mannix's romantic past was quite tangled. He had been married to Bernice Fitzmaurice until she died in 1937 before marrying Toni. Eddie had affairs throughout his marriage to Toni, which created an unspoken agreement between them. This unusual setup gave Toni the freedom that helped her relationship with Reeves grow. Toni and George's affair started secretly, but soon became Hollywood's worst-kept secret. Eddie seemed to accept their relationship. Some industry insiders thought his acceptance came from guilt over his own affairs, while others saw it as a practical way to handle their marriage situation. The three would sometimes appear together at social events. They kept up a friendship facade that barely hid Toni and George's romance. People spotted the couple more often at Los Angeles restaurants and events as time went on. George Reeves found many things appealing about Toni beyond her looks. She gave him something he desperately wanted: stability. His acting career had seen many ups and downs, so Toni's wealth and connections were a great way to get security. Toni's sharp mind and wit fascinated Reeves. People who knew them described her as intelligent and quick-witted. She offered companionship that went deeper than physical attraction. Friends often mentioned their lively conversations and shared humor. Toni's motherly nature seemed to fill an emotional need in Reeves. Being 8 years older, she naturally took care of him. She showed this by managing his daily life, cooking his meals, organizing his schedule, and buying him a home as mentioned earlier. Their relationship helped them both. Reeves got access to Hollywood's power circles through the Mannix name. Toni found excitement and passion with a younger, handsome TV star, things her marriage lacked. Hollywood's social rules were changing when they got together. Affairs weren't new in the film industry, but their openness pushed boundaries even by Hollywood standards. Still, certain social circles accepted their arrangement. Friends said Toni and George lived like a married couple in everything but name. They created routines through dinner parties and built a home life that gave them both emotional satisfaction they couldn't find elsewhere. Toni in her marriage to Eddie and George in his bachelor life. Their lives became more intertwined as time passed. Toni started handling George's finances and appointments, becoming both his manager and lover. This deep connection made their later breakup devastating for both of them. Toni Mannix's relationship with George Reeves reached a turning point in 1950. She bought him a modest house at 1579 Benedict Canyon Drive in Los Angeles. Their shared hideaway from Hollywood's prying eyes was a brown-shingled bungalow built in 1947. The 717-square-foot home had 3 rooms downstairs plus a bedroom and bathroom tucked away in the attic. It totaled 2 bedrooms and 3 baths. Toni's generosity went way beyond providing Reeves with a place to call home. The Benedict Canyon property cost her around $12,000, a hefty sum back then. She didn't stop there. She made sure Reeves had everything he needed: a personal car, stylish clothes to keep up appearances, home furnishings, all expenses paid vacations. One close friend summed it up perfectly. Toni Mannix owned George Reeves' lock, stock, and barrel chest. Her financial support was so thorough that friends said she had built him from the ground up. This setup lasted throughout their 10-year-old relationship. She kept paying his bills even as his Superman fame grew. The house ownership story has some interesting twists. Most sources say Toni bought the home outright for Reeves. Yet, one account suggests she might have just helped with the down payment since his name stayed on the title. She ended up inheriting the property after his death, which shows her financial stake in it. Money shaped the power dynamic between Toni and George in complex ways. She called the shots by controlling his finances. A pocket watch she gave him spoke volumes about their relationship. She had it engraved with "Mad about the boy," treating him more like a prized possession than an equal. They had an unusual setup. Eddie, Mannix, Toni's husband, seemed fine with their affair. People close to them said Eddie knew everything and would show up at their Benedict Canyon home sometimes, grunting his way through the occasional barbecue. This created an odd triangle. Toni kept her marriage while running a second household with Reeves. The Benedict Canyon house became their social hub. They loved hosting friends there and the drink flowing freely from breakfast time onwards. Their hospitality turned their private affair into an open secret among certain Hollywood circles. Toni saw marriage in their future. She carried on the affair in the full expectation of marriage once the ailing Eddie finally succumbed to one of his frequent heart attacks. The house wasn't just a gift. It was her investment in their future together. Her dreams fell apart when Reeves left her for Leonore Lemon in early 1959. Their breakup hit Toni hard because of how much she had invested in Reeves's life. She felt she deserved his loyalty. After they split, she talked about him as her shining prize that got away. It showed how she saw him partly as something she owned rather than just someone she loved. Ending of relationship. George Reeves and Toni Mannix's relationship lasted almost 10 years before it suddenly ended in early 1959. Their breakup created a fundamental change in their lives and started a series of events that would lead to tragedy. Reeves met Leonore Lemon during a business trip to New York in 1958. People knew her as a nightclub hellion, and she had made headlines since she ran away to marry a broke Vanderbilt heir in 1941. Leonore was different from the caring, motherly Toni. She was younger, more wild, and brought new excitement to Reeves's life. Reeves had several reasons to end things with Toni. He wanted to get married. Reports say Reeves asked Toni to leave Eddie and marry him before he met Leonore. She said no because of Eddie's poor health and short life expectancy. Her rejection became a turning point. His career wasn't going well. Reeves' work life was going downhill by 1958. Superman had been canceled and he needed money. As he became less famous, he probably wanted a fresh start in both his personal and professional life. He hit a rough patch. People close to him said he was going through what we'd now call a midlife crisis. Dating the younger, more adventurous Lemon might have been his way to feel young and excited again. Reeves got engaged to Lemon soon after they met. Yes, it is worth noting that by June 2025, they planned to marry on June 19th and honeymoon in Tijuana. Their upcoming wedding likely added to the drama after his breakup with Toni. Toni Mannix took the separation hard. She was getting older and saw Reeves as her shining prize, who she had built from the ground up. Life without him meant just waiting for Eddie Mannix to die, which seemed to be taking a very long time. At first, Toni's pain showed through her actions. She stayed home alone and spent weeks crying. She even called George up to 20 times each day. Her friends worried about her health as her emotional state got worse. Hollywoodland shows her famous anger during this time with scenes of her yelling and threatening Reeves, "I'll tell them you're a red and a fag and a lush." Toni didn't stop at just showing her grief. She supposedly started harassing Reeves. He said someone called him up to 20 times daily and hung up when he answered. He believed Toni made these calls. He even filed a complaint with the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office and named Toni Mannix as the likely caller. Something even more troubling happened when Reeves' Schnauzer Sam disappeared. Someone took the dog from a car while it was getting treatment for losing an eye in a car accident. The breakup affected more than just Toni and George. It caused problems between Toni and Eddie Mannix. Eddie had looked the other way during her 10-year affair with Reeves, but her reaction to the breakup put a strain on their marriage. Toni's emotional state got worse after the split. Her friends worried about her mental health. Later, after Reeves died mysteriously on June 16, 1959, people would speculate about how her anger and jealousy might have played a role. Mysterious circumstances. The death of television's Superman on June 16, 1959, stands as one of Hollywood's biggest mysteries. Questions about what really happened that night still linger decades later. George Reeves and his fiancée Leonore Lemon came back to his Benedict Canyon home around 11 p.m. on June 15, 1959, after a night out. Reeves felt tired and went to bed right away. His fiancée kept the party going by inviting writer Robert Condon and 2 friends over. The noise brought an irritated Reeves downstairs around 1 a.m. He told the group to keep it down and went back upstairs. Right after he left, Lemon made a chilling comment to her guests. "He's going upstairs to shoot himself." The guests heard a noise from Reeves's bedroom. Lemon kept up her dark predictions. "See, he's opening the drawer to get the crime tool." A sound broke the silence moments later, and Lemon said, "I told you he's done it himself." No one called the police for half an hour after hearing the sound of the crime tool. The fatal sound happened between 1:30 and 2:00 a.m., according to investigators. Police found Reeves naked on his bed with a bullet hole in his right temple. A Luger pistol lay on the floor between his legs. That same morning brought another twist. Actress Phyllis Coates got a disturbing call from Toni Mannix at 4:30 a.m. A hyperventilating Mannix said, "The boy is dead. He's been harmed." This call came before any public announcement of Reeves's death, raising questions about Mannix's knowledge of the tragedy. Several people were inside Reeves's Benedict Canyon home when he died. Leonore Lemon, his fiancée, who planned to marry him 3 days later on June 19th. Robert Condon, a writer working on Reeves's story. Carol Van Ronkel, who showed up with William Bliss around 1 a.m. William Bliss, Van Ronkel's companion that night. Police found all witnesses very drunk, which made it hard to get clear stories about what happened. Lemon said she stayed in the living room with other guests during the shooting. Other accounts suggested she might have been closer to Reeves's bedroom. Fred Crane Reeves's Gone with the Wind co-star later shared something interesting. Bill Bliss told Millicent Trent that after the sound of the crime tool, Leonore Lemon ran downstairs saying, "Tell them I was down here. Tell them I was down here." The police ruled Reeves's death. They based this on witness statements, scene evidence, and autopsy findings. Beverly Hills police wrote that Reeves suddenly, without any explanation, left the room and impulsively ended his own life. The case had many odd details that still spark questions. The crime tool had no fingerprints. Reeves's hands showed no traces of the crime tool. They found the bullet in the bedroom ceiling, but the shell casing under his body. The same crime tool fired 2 more bullets into the bedroom floor, yet everyone heard just one sound. Reeves had a 0.27 blood alcohol level, making it questionable if he could handle a crime tool. The authorities never looked into the case again. Lemon later claimed she was only kidding about her strange comments before the sound of the crime tool. The Los Angeles Times noted an element of mystery in Reeves's death right from the start. Reeves's mother, Helen Basolo, wouldn't accept death as the cause. She hired Jerry Giesler, a top Hollywood lawyer, to look deeper. A second autopsy showed bruises on Reeves's head and body that no one ever explained. Then something strange happened. Giesler dropped the case early in his investigation. Toni Mannix allegedly harasses Reeves before his death. George Reeves became the target of relentless harassment in the months before his death. Evidence points to Toni Mannix as the person behind it all. Their relationship's breakdown seemed to push her from heartbreak to something nowhere near normal, setting a dark stage before the Superman actor's mysterious death. The harassment Reeves faced took many disturbing forms. His unlisted number would ring up to 20 times daily, with callers hanging up as soon as he answered. These calls came late at night and disrupted his sleep, causing him intense stress. The pattern continued for 3 months before his death, sometimes mixed with more explicit threats. Toni's actions went beyond phone calls. She watched Reeves' Benedict Canyon home from her car across the street. This constant surveillance put immense pressure on him. His car troubles added to the mounting tension. Police records showed what looked like planned accidents. Reeves grew more worried about his safety and realized these weren't just coincidences. The situation took an even darker turn with his dog's disappearance. Sources link Toni to the pet's possible kidnapping and death. This act showed a shift from harassment to something more sinister. Safety concerns and endless harassment pushed Reeves to take action. He started by filing a report with Beverly Hills Police about the threats and strange incidents. Later, he took his case to the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. The complaint named Toni Mannix directly as the suspected harasser. This bold step showed how sure Reeves felt about who was behind his troubles. His friend Arthur Weissman confirmed Reeves' strong belief in Toni's guilt. The district attorney's investigation revealed an unexpected twist. Both Reeves and Toni Mannix received threatening calls. This discovery raised questions about a possible third party's involvement. Some investigators thought Eddie Mannix might be behind the harassment of both Reeves and his wife. Eddie's reputation made this theory believable. Weissman believed the MGM executive was responsible for both the threats and attempts on Reeves's life. Reeves took extra steps to protect himself. His lawyer warned Toni Mannix and her friend Jean Lanier to stay away, threatening legal action if the harassment continued. Toni Mannix diary. And here's will be this hidden story that you never heard behind his death. Toni took a real liking to George. Unlike her husband Eddie Mannix, a powerful studio executive, George had a natural charm and striking good looks that instantly caught her attention. He was in many ways her ideal man, charismatic, polished, and ambitious. As their bond deepened, Toni began to take an active interest in George's life and career. Eddie Mannix knew all about George Reeves and Toni. He approved of it. It got her off his back. A friend of theirs remembers being over at the Mannix house in Beverly Hills one morning when Eddie was sitting in the kitchen in his robe and pajamas eating his breakfast, when, without knocking or ringing the doorbell, George came bounding in. The back door said hello to Eddie. Eddie helloed to him and went straight for the refrigerator, where he helped himself to a glass of milk. That was how familiar everyone was with each other, the friend recalled. Not long after, George landed the role that would define his legacy, Superman. The television series quickly became a cultural phenomenon, catapulting George into stardom and securing his place in the hearts of audiences across America. Despite the fame, the workload was intense. Episodes were filmed in rapid succession, 26 in just 13 weeks, and George found himself under tremendous pressure. Still, his relationship with Toni remained strong during this time. She would often visit him on set, bringing lunch and showing unwavering support. On one memorable occasion, she joined George and a few cast members, including the actors who played Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, for a casual lunch break. Conversation turned playful and personal, a reflection of Toni's outgoing and bold personality. According to those who were there, she often made colorful remarks and enjoyed being the center of attention. One day, they asked Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen to join them. The conversation got onto age and shape. Toni told Jimmy that she was in such great shape that she didn't need to wear a bra. To demonstrate her point, she took Jimmy's hand and put it inside her blouse on her chest so that he could tell firsthand. That said, a friend who related the story was Toni obsessed with the physical and herself. After a year, the Superman series was getting so popular, the producers started sending George out on publicity tours all over the country. Everyone knew that George was Toni's guy, but not everyone. Especially Toni knew that George also had an eye for the broads, just like Eddie Mannix. As the success of Adventures of Superman grew, George was frequently sent on national publicity tours to promote the show. His popularity skyrocketed, and though many knew of his long-standing relationship with Toni, George's newfound fame brought fresh attention and temptations. It wasn't long before he met Lenore Lemon, a vivacious former socialite and nightclub regular while traveling in Florida. Their connection was immediate and intense. Within a short time, George proposed, and Lenore accepted. Upon returning to California, George informed Toni of his engagement. Outwardly composed, Toni gave little sign of the heartbreak she felt. George, perhaps unaware of the depth of her feelings, believed the transition would be smooth. But those close to both of them knew the truth. Toni had been deeply invested in George, not just emotionally, but also in terms of time, financial support, and professional encouragement. The end of their relationship left Toni devastated. Friends described her as hurt, betrayed, and caught off guard by how quickly George had moved on. While George looked toward the future with Lenore, he underestimated the complexity of his past. The emotional entanglements were far from over. She was shattered, but not the type to show it. So George thought everything was fine. He was free at last. George was as naive as Clark Kent looks. Toni was outraged. Had he really forgotten from whence all blessings came? So outraged was she that she had other plans for George's career, a major career move. In those days, there was a heavy mafia influence at certain studios, and it was well known around the MGM lot that you could get someone to die for $150. Toni Mannix knew. The guy just went over to George's house and into his room. Word got out that it was do it himself, and because MGM and Eddie Mannix were still powerful, that was how it was told to the papers. Hell hath no fury. Toni Mannix's private diary surfaced after George Reeves's tragic death. Her handwritten journal revealed her emotional devastation. She wrote in it through her later years, giving us a rare look into the mind of a woman overwhelmed by grief and possibly guilt over losing the man she called her shining prize. The diary pages paint a picture of a woman tortured by emotions deeper than normal grief. Toni called herself the guilty party when writing about Reeves's death. She used this phrase repeatedly. Her self-accusations came with prayers for forgiveness hinting at something more serious than just regret over their breakup. 3 months after Reeves died, Toni wrote something deeply troubling. "I would give anything to turn back time. What have I done?" She visited his grave every week, suggesting her mind was haunted by more than just loss. Her diary had strange entries about phone calls she said she got from Reeves after he died. She wrote detailed accounts of these calls, saying his voice told her, "All is forgiven now." Mental health experts later looked at these writings and thought they showed either severe psychological issues or someone trying to deal with overwhelming guilt. The most revealing detail came near the end of her life. Toni told her nurse she knew who killed Superman. This matched with an earlier incident where she called actress Phyllis Coates to say, "He's been harmed," before anyone knew about Reeves's death. These events created a disturbing pattern that suggested she had information she never told the authorities. Her emotional breakdown turned into a long-term crippling condition. She became a recluse after Reeves died and barely left her house. Her friends said she kept his Benedict Canyon home exactly as it was during their relationship. The house became a shrine to their time together. Toni's behavior showed clear signs of complicated grief. She wore Reeves' clothes every day. She watched Superman episodes daily. She refused to accept his relationship with Leonore Lemon. She had one-sided conversations with Reeves. Instead of healing, Toni stayed stuck in the past. Her mental health got worse as time went on. The 1970s brought Alzheimer's disease, which trapped her in confused memories of Reeves while making the painful details of his death less sharp. Toni Mannix stayed married to Toni until he died in 1963, just 4 years after Reeves passed away. He took care of his increasingly unstable wife, but also controlled who could see her. This made people wonder if he worried about what she might say about Reeves's death. Investigators revisit the case amid theories. Public interest and skepticism about George Reeves' death have persisted for decades after the official death ruling. People continue to break down the case due to several inconsistencies in the police work. Toni Mannix's reputation as MGM's fixer with alleged mob connections made him a prime suspect. Authors Sam Kashner and Nancy Schoenberger suggest in Hollywood Kryptonite that Eddie might have arranged Reeves's death to avenge Toni's broken heart. His track record of making MGM executives and stars' scandals disappear showed his ability to handle difficult situations. Some investigators point out that Mannix allegedly had his first wife killed in 1937 by running her car off the road. Critics of this theory argue that Mannix would never have left his registered crime tool at the crime scene if he was responsible. Helen Basolo Reeves's mother refused to accept her son's death and asked Jerry Giesler to request a second autopsy. The new examination backed most of the original autopsy findings but found unexplained bruises on Reeves's head and body that nobody looked into. A month later, Giesler abruptly stepped away from the case and said he accepted the self-inflicted wound conclusion. His sudden exit led many to wonder if someone had pressured him to drop the investigation. The 2006 film Hollywoodland, with Ben Affleck as Reeves and Diane Lane as Toni Mannix, brought new attention to the case. The story explored 4 possible scenarios: Leonore Lemon accidentally shooting Reeves during a drunken argument, Toni Mannix ordering a hit, Toni Mannix seeking revenge, or Reeves taking his own life because of his failing career. The movie stands as a careful and compelling sifting of the facts and possibilities, and gives Reeves a worthwhile memorial even without solving the mystery completely. What happened to Toni Mannix after Reeves's death? After the tragic and mysterious passing of George Reeves, the man who had come to symbolize strength and justice to an entire generation as Superman, Toni Mannix entered a new and somber chapter of her life, one defined by grief, solitude, and lingering memories of a love that never truly left her heart. Toni had been more than just a partner to Reeves during his rise to fame. She had been his steadfast supporter, his confidant, and in many ways his protector, in a world that could be as harsh as it was glamorous. When Reeves was gone, the lights of Hollywood may have still glittered, but for Toni, something had dimmed permanently. Though rumors and whispers swirled as they often do in the hills of Hollywood, Toni never publicly responded to the speculations that haunted the years following Reeves's passing. What remained clear to those close to her was her deep sorrow and the lasting place George had held in her life. Friends who visited her in later years spoke of a room in her home where his memory lived on photographs, memorabilia, and reel after reel of his television appearances. It was said that she would sit for hours watching his old episodes, whispering softly, "He really was one of the greats, and so very handsome." Following the death of her husband, Toni Mannix, nearly a decade after Reeves's, Toni's life grew quieter. Though their marriage was complex and unconventional, Toni ensured she fulfilled her final duties to Eddie with dignity. In her later years, she found solace in giving back. She signed over her estate to St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica, a gesture of generosity that would later support care for others. In return, the hospital offered her a private suite where she lived comfortably in her twilight years. There, away from the bright lights and movie premieres, Toni spent her final days surrounded not by crowds but by memories. She would tell visitors about the golden age, about MGM, the premieres, and of course about George. Her stories painted vivid portraits of a Hollywood now gone, where dreams were stitched into the very fabric of the city, but where hearts like hers were sometimes left behind in the silence between the spotlights. Toni Mannix passed away in 1983. And while the controversies and unanswered questions surrounding the lives she touched may never fully be resolved, what remains is the image of a woman who loved deeply, gave generously, and never truly stopped believing in the man who once flew across television screens and into her heart. Was it a heartbreak? Was it revenge? Or something more orchestrated by powerful men behind the curtain? The diary may never be fully released, but its existence is enough to make us question everything. Let us know your thoughts. Do you think George Reeves really took his own life? Or did someone silence the Man of Steel for good? Like, subscribe, and tap the bell for more untold stories from the dark side of Hollywood.